Hey, third grade, we're going to do some history. I know you're like, oh, I'm done with history. No, I hope that you'll listen. We have 3 days. We have 3 people. I think perfect thing to do and to learn about these last 3 men that we're going to talk about in history. So page 450, I was going to say another number, but 450, chapter 46, George W. Bush. This is history, especially these last 3. That's your history. You are part of this. You know, you look at the timeline and the timeline goes well into 2000s, which, hello, where are we right now? 2020, and that's our timeline. So you can look at this and go, well, I'm part of this history, and you are. So I really hope that you will listen and enjoy learning about these last 3 men. Young George Bush. So we can see he was born in 1946, and then there's the dash, the little hyphen, and there's no end date because he's still alive. So he's part of your history. You're a part of his history because you're alive during his lifetime, which is kind of a neat thing. So, you know, years from now, you can say, yes, I was alive during President George Bush's lifetime, okay? And you can share that with your children. Young George Bush. Come on, Georgie, hit the ball, shouted one of George's neighborhood friends. When George and his friends weren't playing baseball, they were riding their bikes or playing other sports. Sometimes George had a hard time concentrating on his schoolwork because he would rather be outside playing ball with his friends. Anybody relate to that? Some of you like right now, Miss Monroe, I'd rather be outside playing than be sitting here watching this video. Well, George Bush could understand. He was that same way. I really would love to go out and be doing other things rather than sitting here. Perhaps no one considered that this ordinary boy who just loved to play and wasn't really loving school that much would one day make history, help to make history. You don't have to be this stellar learner, all A's and all in and all this and all that. No, maybe you struggle. Maybe you think, I struggle too much. I don't like to concentrate and I really have a hard time. And whatever. So did he. But he went on to do some great things in history, and so can you. You never know what you can do if you put your mind to it. So let the Lord lead you. Let him help you to make those decisions and choices to say, you know, it is difficult for me, but I'm going to still do my best. I'm going to work my hardest. After elementary school in Midland, Texas, George moved away from home to attend an all-boys boarding school in Massachusetts, not far from here. He was one of the best athletes at his high school and made friends quickly. Since his favorite subject in school was history, he decided to study history in college too. After college, he served as a pilot in the Texas Air National Guard. He married Laura Welch, had twin girls, and built a successful oil company. Later, he was the owner of his own baseball team, the Texas Rangers. So what he loved to do as a kid, he was able to own an actual baseball team as he got older. Look at the words at the bottom of the page. Important words, important names. Dictator. A dictator is a ruler with unlimited power. That means nobody can tell him what to do. He's here and he just makes everybody else follow him. So he's got unlimited power. It's kind of a scary thing. Allies are countries working together for a military goal. And then names, obviously, George W. Bush, Governor of Texas, 43rd President of the United States. And then War on Terror, war declared by George W. Bush against the terrorists who attacked the United States on September 11th, 2001. And we've talked about that. We talked about that on September 11th. A family who serves. George Bush was born into a family who served in politics. His grandfather was a senator, and his father became the 41st President of the United States. Would George someday follow in their footsteps? George Bush decided to run for governor of the state of Texas, winning the 1994 election. After being reelected for a second term, Governor Bush decided to run for president. He campaigned diligently to earn the most votes, but on election day in 2000, the vote was too close to call. The results all depended on the vote count in the state of Florida. After a whole month later, they're still recounting those votes. The Supreme Court announced that George Bush won the election. Young Georgie, the baseball player, was now President George W. Bush, the United States 43rd president. And many important things happened during his time in office. September 11th, 2001. One of President Bush's greatest challenges happened in his first year as president. Enemies of the United States captured 4 airplanes and flew them into 3 buildings on September 11th, 2001. The 4th plane crashed into a field instead of into another building as it was intended. It was supposed to go into the Pentagon. We talked about that. It was supposed to fly into the Pentagon. That was the plan. The master planners thought we're going to hit these really important hubs in America. And that's where that 4th plane was going, but it went into a field because of the heroic actions of the passengers. The passengers of that plane took over the person that hijacked the plane, that took over the plane from the pilot, planned to fly it, but then the passengers found out that there was somebody that was hijacking the plane, and they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want America to be harmed anymore, so they took over the plane and they made it be somewhere safer than a building that could kill, thousands and thousands of people, which, took their own lives, but they were willing to do that to save, a precious part of America. They were actually not going into the Pentagon, because one did go into the Pentagon. They were actually, that plane was headed towards the White House at that time. I totally was mixing my facts up. That plane was headed towards the White House, and before it could get there, it went down in a field in Pennsylvania. Anyway, the point is, there were heroic passengers on board that flight that changed the direction of that. But many people died in this attack on America. President Bush decided that to protect the United States, there would have to be a war on terror. He sent the military to a country called Afghanistan to find Osama bin Laden, the man in charge of the September 11th attacks. He needed to know that that was not going to be allowed ever again. And I know there's a lot of different varying views and things on it, but it was something that George Bush believed very seriously needed to take place, so that people could understand we're not going to have somebody harm us and not make sure that the world knows, don't do that to us again. The war spread to the country of Iraq, whose leader Saddam Hussein was also believed to support terrorism, and especially against America. The United States military and its allies freed Iraq from this dictator. And in 2005, the people of Iraq had their first free election in 50 years. And I'll tell you, when I would, if I were in the classroom doing this with you guys, I would pull out the picture of Mrs. Hovey's son again and show you, because right after high school, Jordan went over and he fought for this country, for our freedoms. He fought in the war for terror. He did, I believe, 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he got hurt. His military vehicle was blown up, and he has shrapnel. I think I've told you that before when we were talking about September 11th. Shrapnel in his body. He has a purple heart, not a literal purple heart. Somebody was like, can I look at his heart and can we open it up and see? No, purple heart is a medal that is given to soldiers who have gone and have been hurt in duty and have served their country so strongly. And Jordan has that. And so that's why I call Jordan my hero. He would hate if he ever saw this video. He would be like, take it off now. I don't want that shown. I don't want that heard. But I do believe it needs to be told, because he is a true hero that fought for our freedoms. And, he's a young man. He's still only in his 30s right now. So he's a young man who fought for our freedoms because of this awful attack on our country on September 11th, 2001. And here, these people of Iraq, they have a freedom that they hadn't had in so long, freed from a dictator like Saddam Hussein, who was like, I get to rule over everybody and tell everybody what to do. And things changed. President Bush worked diligently to protect America and its allies from their enemies. Space exploration. Since the 1960s, NASA has sent missions to space, and we've talked about that with John Glenn and Neil Armstrong and all those. President Bush believed the space program should continue exploring our solar system. In 2003, NASA scientists sent 2 robotic vehicles on an unmanned mission to Mars. So that means it was not man going up to Mars because they wouldn't be able to survive, but we're just going to send these machines to Mars. The Spirit and Opportunity rovers reached the planet in 2004. While only built to last for a 90-day mission, the Opportunity rover continued sending photographs back to Earth for more than 10 years. So it was only supposed to last for 90 days. How many months would that be if there's 30 to 31 days? Right, so it would be about 3 months. But this lasted for more than 10 years, where it was taking pictures and sending them back to the United States, taking pictures and sending them back. Beginning in the 1930s, Pluto was listed as the 9th planet in our solar system. In 2006, scientists realized that Pluto did not meet the definition of a planet. It is very small compared to the 8 planets and is surrounded by objects that are similar in size to it. Scientists still study Pluto to learn more about the solar system beyond Neptune. So, like I had told you when we were studying the planets, I learned with Pluto at the end that, you know, the saying with Pluto at the end, but you guys don't have that anymore because it ends with Neptune now. Technology. Improvements in technology in the 21st century have changed the way the world does business, as well as the way we communicate with each other and even how we learn. Like this. Before those times, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. In the early 2000s, technology companies like Microsoft, Apple, and Samsung worked to develop better televisions, computers, and cell phones. One of the most important inventions of the 21st century is the handheld smartphone. The technology used in a smartphone allows the user to find any information he needs quickly and easily. New discoveries in technology continue to change the way we live and work. So modern marvels, really quickly. For thousands of years, man has searched for ways to quickly find answers. Even in Bible times, people used an abacus to add and subtract large numbers. It was not until the 1800s that a man named Charles Babbage invented a calculating machine that operated on steam power. How funny is that? From that time, inventors continued to work on creating a machine that could find answers quickly. Finally, in the 1940s, scientists built machines that could store information using memory. These computers were very expensive and were only used in large businesses. During World War II, a young woman named Grace Hopper joined the Navy as a volunteer. Since Miss Hopper was an expert in math, her assignment was to go to Harvard University to program their first computer, the Mark I. This computer did not look like modern computers that you would know today. It was 8 feet tall and 51 feet long. Can you imagine having that in your house to try to do your work? It filled a whole room, but it could do in only one day what would normally take a whole month. There were no manuals to tell someone how to use, work, or repair this computer. Grace and her team wrote the very first computer manual themselves. During the war, Grace and the men who worked on the Mark I computer worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Grace even slept next to the computer so that if something went wrong, she could get up and repair it. Computer programmers use certain languages to tell a computer what to do. At first, numbers and dashes were used. Grace Hopper created a better computer language that used letters and English words. Her computer language, called COBOL, is still used today by many businesses over 50 years after she invented it. Desktop computers were made in the 1960s, but they were very expensive. It was not until the late 1990s that computers began to be used in homes. Today's laptop computers and smartphones are much more advanced than early computers. Large computers, now called supercomputers, are still used in big businesses, the government, and the military. These machines predict weather, help in scientific and medical research, and help the military keep us safe. They are thousands of times faster than a laptop, tablet, or handheld device. As man uses the creativity God has given him, technology will continue to improve each year. Grace Hopper would never have imagined holding in her hand a small computer that could do much more than the Mark I computer that filled an entire room. Weathering storms. Several major storms have affected the United States during the 21st century. One of the largest was Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall in the southeastern United States in 2005 as the costliest hurricane in the history of the United States. Hurricane Katrina was a Category 5 hurricane, the most powerful type, with 170-mile-per-hour winds. These winds, along with flooding, caused a great deal of damage to the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Many hundreds of people lost their lives and thousands more lost their homes. Later life. George W. Bush served as president for 8 years. Since his retirement from politics, he has enjoyed painting portraits of people who have served in the military. He also wrote a book which tells the stories of veterans who were wounded in recent wars. The portraits and stories honor their bravery and courage while serving the United States. Stop and think. A president's job is very difficult. What are things you could do to help or encourage the president? And I want you to think about that. We criticize. We find people to criticize all the time. We criticize our teachers because we didn't like that they're still teaching, even though we think that they shouldn't. We criticize our pastors because we think that they shouldn't be open or they should be open for this COVID time. We criticize our administrators because they should have stayed in school or they shouldn't have been in school that longer. What are we going to do and what's happening? And we don't know this information. It's easy to criticize when we're not in those positions. But what can you do? What can we do for our president? And look what it says. 1 Timothy 2, 1 and 2. I exhort, therefore, that first of all, supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men. All men? I'm supposed to be thankful for all men, for kings, and for all that are in authority. I didn't say it. He did. And so, if anything, we need to remember to pray for people rather than criticize and put them down, because there's enough other pressures putting people down. Let's encourage and lift one another up in prayer, and that's an important thing to be able to do. That's it. That's the life of George W. Bush in a nutshell. So we're going to have 2 more days, 2 more people that we're going to learn about, and I'll get back with you tomorrow because this is getting really long already. I will see you soon. I love you. Bye.